They don't work hard. And this kid, the CEO, got up and he said, can I just tell you all something right now? You don't understand millennials. We were born with a level of technology that we are definitely looking for easier, and we're sick and tired of your hard knocks, hard way of doing things. If there's a smarter way, why on earth would I do it your way? I am done with your way. I don't want to do your way. And by the way, until I find a better way, if I choose to sit on my butt and value my time by goofing around, playing around, guess what? It's there by choice. We demand a smarter approach to life.
We are joined today by Kris, your brother, Steve.
My brother, Steve, is in town. We got a family reunion going on, and I drug him. I'm like, hey, come in studio. I got to bust out a couple of quickies, and then we'll go join the brothers, and we'll go have some fun.
I love it. So I've got some slightly invasive questions for you. What year were you born?
1977.
1977.
Yeah, he is not a millennial.
So
not even close.
So I did some cursory research, and there's a lot of generalizations in this, but baby boomers is 1946 to 1964. Gen X, which is like the nameless, faceless generation, is 1965 to 1979 about. And there's some fudge room in there. But so you would fall in Gen X.
Right.
And Gen X are known, and I just want to know if this holds true for you. Gen Xers are known for still reading newspapers.
Oh my gosh.
Nope.
Sad.
Gen Xers are known for still purchasing magazines.
Not me.
Okay, so you might not actually, you're on that borderline too, and I think you're there too, Kris. And they're also known for still listening to actual FM radio.
Maybe guilty.
Oh, Gen Xer. No, today I want to talk a little bit about, baby boomers, Gen X, millennials. They take all this heat because they're becoming adults. They're having careers right now, and
they're doing so good.
I know,
I am so proud of our millennials, right?
Yeah.
They might be financially screwed in like 10 different ways, but I think that they are, and I'll include myself there, we are growing up and living good, productive lives.
So I think it's interesting because nobody wants to admit to being one of these millennials.
Listen, a millennial it is the most misunderstood generation. Unfortunately, 10 years ago, we created all sorts of stereotypes for how lazy these bastards are. They won't get up. They won't failure to launch. They won't do anything with their lives. And I'm like technology has created an opportunity for them, and the older generation just doesn't get it. And I am so proud of the standards that millennials have in general.
So I want to know if you guys agree or disagree with the following statements about millennials. So they're born between like 1980. Some people say 1977. Others say 1980 is kind of cut off.
I'm a late 79.
79. So you're like on that verge, but it's 1980 to 1995.
Yeah.
It is people that were born in time to see the internet like come to life and technology change everything, but they remember how it was for their parents. So they're kind of in this weird zone that's different than Gen Z that just have accepted all these things their entire life.
It's all they know.
So millennials, your parents were baby boomers probably.
Yep.
Millennials are known for being born near the very end of the last millennium, when technology revolutionized things. One interesting thing, how they consume media is one of the ways that they determine these generations. So they say that millennials are cord cutting in favor of streaming services.
Heck yeah.
Totally true.
Me too.
Yeah.
Cable seems like the dumbest thing to spend money on. Why would you want to have to choose
I gotta be so careful with TikTok because I will get sucked into the void where I'm just like flipping through and I'm like, wow. I watched this one. Someone took a corn on the cob and they took toothpicks and they drove it through like a whole bunch of individual kerners, cut them off, deep fried them, then put some chipotle on top and turned it and then separated out. That made the most amazing dish. I'm like, I send it to all my friends. I'm like, if you love me, make me this.
Yeah. I saw this TikTok where they have you seen those Uncrustables that you do for your kids? They're like frozen peanut butter and jelly. They're pieces of crap. This lady takes an Uncrustable, punches a hole in the middle, fries it, dips it in sugar and cinnamon.
And then calls it a PB&J donut.
It's a PB&J donut. And she swears, she's like, and this went totally viral on TikTok. She swears it's like the most amazing PB&J you'll ever have in your life.
If you combine PB&J and donuts, yeah, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Millennials are good at accepting change.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, I think they embrace new things, but then when they decide, they stick to it.
That's interesting.
I got to share an experience that I had with millennials. It completely resonated with me. There was a few years back. I found myself in New York at a think tank. There was a bunch of very, very wealthy people sitting around a table to hear someone's idea that they thought would be the next big thing. And we were all there to kind of weigh in on it, maybe be investors into it, and I went because there were some people in that table that I wanted to meet. There were some who's who there. And there was this one company now worth a few $100 million, and the CEO of that company who had founded the idea was there. He was a millennial. And this group of relatively older individuals from the, Gen X they went on this complaining rant about millennials. Oh, dude, they're so lazy. They just don't have motivation and drive, and they don't want stuff. And, they don't work hard. And this kid, the CEO, got up and he said, can I just tell you all something right now? You don't understand millennials. We were born with a level of technology that we are definitely looking for easier, and we're sick and tired of your hard knocks, hard way of doing things. If there's a smarter way, why on earth would I do it your way? I am done with your way. I don't want to do your way. And by the way, until I find a better way, if I choose to sit on my butt and value my time by goofing around, playing around, guess what? It's there by choice. We demand a smarter approach to life. And when he said that, I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so the mantra of the way that I do live my life, because I use technology for massive amounts of leverage to be able to touch as many services as I possibly can. And I won't say that all millennials think that way, but I do believe that they lend themselves to basically saying, guess what? This generation, we are raising the standards. By the way, my company is nothing but millennials. Yes. And so if the environment isn't what, Carson? I mean, you created the environment, you created the culture.
Unique.
What do millennials require? Why is it that they love this environment that you created?
Because they say we're like family.
Hey, what does it mean?
It means that we're real people, that there's no corporate BS, that it's like you can walk up to anybody at the company and strike up a conversation. Like, yes, in terms of working on projects, hierarchy is important, but in terms of like social stratus, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Like they want to connect.
We all just want to connect with anybody. There's no like, oh, don't go to knock on his door.
And don't get me wrong, dude, they
CEO.
Love the perks.
Oh, yeah.
They are built on perks.
All about
They're
perks.
like, make it fun because I want to work hard as long as I really, really like it here.
You know the real reason I think we attracted so many millennials?
No.
Our flexibility.
Yeah.
Because you and I are similar in this, Kris. And I want to know, Steve, if you're similar this way too. I don't care about punching in, punching out. In fact, I hate when someone punches out at 5 and they're like, well, your problem now. I'm done. I'm off the clock. We kind of don't operate that way. We're more project oriented, where it's like we want a result and we really don't care.
Dude, someone had the cojones to accuse me. They're like, oh, I know what you want. You want me to work as many hours as I possibly can. I said, hello? I care about one thing, the result. And if you're smart enough to get it done in 1 hour a week, I'll pay you the same amount of money plus a big fat bonus, because this is a results culture, which means we're not for some people, but I don't care about your effort. I don't care how much work you put in and couldn't figure it out. And I don't care how little you put in to produce an amazing result. I would rather pay you a lot more money for a lot less time because you're going to be happier. I'm going to get the result. I'm going to be happier. Like, that's the culture.
Yep. So flexibility, what's your take on that, Steve?
Well, I don't think, millennials are going to make a big sacrifice in one area of their life and miss out and lose out on something just to have something over here. They kind of want it all.
That's interesting.
That actually sums it up really well. There's a certain level of balance. I think that mobility is important to them. Flexibility is important to them.
I wonder if we should be saying us. Like, let's not forget that I think all three of us fall more in the category of millennial than we like to admit.
Yeah, well, and you know what? I also think, though, that even the older generation they're just slower, but the dinosaurs are moving in the direction of, what's this thing called text? I hate this text device. I'm like, you are way too young to not text. You're like, you got to get on that. This is the way that we want to talk. Don't ever call me. Don't ever email me.
Here's another take on millennials that I think was really interesting, and I want to know your guys' interpretation of this. Millennials actually visit public libraries more regularly than any other group.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, shocker.
That surprises me.
Why? You talk about not millennials don't want to own things. Of course they're going to say, buy a book that I'll read once and leave on a shelf and it accumulates dust.
Yeah. I'm jaded because the people that I think I attract and that I want to spend time with, they are the subset of millennials that say, hey, yes, I want mobility, I want freedom, I want a smarter way, and I want a lot of money. Like, they're the people that are saying, hey, money will buy you books. You don't have to go and borrow them. There's nothing wrong with borrowing, but I think you can't maximize flexibility and you can't maximize freedom without having a certain amount of money in the bank, right? You got to figure out a certain level of money if you want to have more. Because dude, it's craziest market testing that I did on one of my websites. I went out there as I had done, the Decorate before, and I put up this new website and said, hey, learn how to make $10,000 in 30 days. The opt-ins, the conversions were not good. And I'm like,
was it too high a number?
Well, let's try 20,000. Make 20,000 in 30 days. I can do that. This real estate, that's easy. Lower conversions. So then I got curious. I'm like, $5,000? Cha-ching!
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, everyone's like, I want it. I'm like, what? So I started split testing. You know what the number was that the majority of millennials in that age group were interested in?
9,000.
$6,762 a month. That is so weird. But guess what? They don't want, by the way, millennials in general, they don't want to be rich. They want to be comfortable and have enough money. And by the way, they would prefer to make all that money without having to work at a desk job. They would prefer to select their hours of when they work. And I think to some extent, they're satisfied with less than previous generations because they realize if I want more, and if that has to equate to a lot of hard work, I think my life might be passing me by. I would rather have less money, but be present and enjoy my life more. Yep. I think that's a hallmark.
Which is interesting because when we start talking about measuring life in terms of happiness, maybe owning all this stuff and all the materialism isn't what we thought it was.
Dude, I hate ownership. Ownership is so freaking expensive. I want to buy that boat. Really, because you want to service it and then you want to take it out of the water and debarnacle it and you like doing all that stuff.
Just rent it for the 1 weekend a year.
No, listen. I mean, once you buy something, you know what the worst part about ownership is? I have to get my money's worth.
Yep.
It's like I like to go snowboarding. And I once went with this buddy who for him, a couple $100 ski pass for the day was like a lot of money. So, after about 3 hours, we're good. We had bombed the hill a number of times. He's like, okay, day's half over. Let's go for 5 more hours. I'm like, I'm good. I'm good. He's like, no. I need to get, and I'm like, no. I just want to pay for what I want and none of the extra. And ownership, you can mortgage your life away.
Yeah.
You can get yourself so financially committed to all these obligations. And then all of a sudden, boom, that freedom and that flexibility, it's out the door. Yeah. And they get that. They'd rather commit less.
I think they want to be rich in experiences and they're not willing to chase money in lieu of that.
I think travel's a bigger deal for sure.
For sure.
So another take on millennials. This is the first super negative one. Millennials are known for being entitled. Agree, disagree? Oh, nobody wants to speak first.
Okay, I'll speak. They're entitled, and that's not necessarily bad. Entitlement is very different than the word entitle, and I think it's a word that is heavily abused, and so unfortunately, it has more negative associated with it than positive. But I look at the results that I have in my life, and it's because I believed that I was entitled to a better life. And then I also realized it was my job to go out there and get it. So I'm in favor of just the definition of entitlement if it means that I get to be the actor that puts forth effort, energy, and makes something happen. Entitlement means you owe me something? Oh, hell no. That's the part of entitlement that I can't stand. I'm like, no one owes you anything. If you want more, that's on you. That's your onus that you have to figure out how to get that. So I think it's kind of mixed. I think that you're going to find both sides of that equation in there.
Certainly. Well, and I think all of this talk about millennials and Gen X, Gen Z, there's a lot of gross
stereotypes,
generalization. Anybody can buck these norms. Don't let it hold you back.
Yeah.
But it is interesting to think about and be aware of these things. I think a lot of this comes down to the belief that millennials, their parents had a lot of stuff, and so they just assumed that was part of life. Was, oh yeah, you have a house and a car and all these things, whereas their parents spent their entire lives working towards it.
Can I tell you something real sad though?
Yeah.
I am nervous at the direction I see this country going in.
Yeah.
I see us, it's no longer right wing, left wing. I believe that we are moving very, very strongly towards socialism. And I've lived in a socialistic country. And I got to tell you, if that's concerning to you, go live in a socialistic country for a few months and look at the attitude, the energy, and the motivation of the people. And what a socialistic energy does is it demotivates people from wanting to do something unique or different or noteworthy with their life. And you're giving enough power to the government that is basically trying to supply things for you. I can't believe in this last bill that Biden is so proud of, that we're now giving money to people to pay for their internet. When did that become an entitlement? When does my tax dollars go to you, by the way, fully being able to get a job and not because you would rather collect a check from the government?
Certainly.
And then just go and like cruise on the government's internet? Are you kidding me? Government broadband? It's nuts. We I think have way too much big, heavy-handed, big brother federal government stepping in and trying to make choices that need to be on us. It's one thing to create social programs to help the underprivileged. It's another thing to start elevating privileges that you should go and work for and to take that away. I've done that. I've seen what happens when you remove people's incentives to work or produce a better life. And so it has me a little bit nervous. So listen, these millennials, they might be saying, yeah, I mean, financially, I could be saving more money. I could be working hard. I could be getting better ahead. But dude, there's a possibility 30, 40 years from now when they're old and they're looking at retirement, that society has moved so far into socialism that guess what?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter anyway. You didn't have to work hard.
Yep. Sucks.
Because the government will give you, maybe it's not your Social Security $2,000 a month, but maybe it's this, it's $4,000 or $5,000 a month or whatever they've created. And you can't live, by the way, you can live a complete happy life on very little money, but most can't, because there's so much fear and scarcity from judging every financial choice and gravitating towards the least expensive option day in and day out, year after year, decade after decade. And so I'm a little bit nervous because they may get rewarded in the end with the direction that our government is moving in. But I hope that there is a revolt, a fight, something. I hope enough of our freedom is preserved where we can still keep enough semblance in this great country to still have an opportunity to create the life that we want, because it is not going in a good way right now.
Well, and I want to bring up
Agree or disagree?
I agree. I think that some of the mindset of millennials might pair rather well with socialism, therefore might bring it on faster. So I'm concerned for that, for our country too.
I want to bring up a concept that I think is going to be very unpopular.
Oh, good. We never do that on this show.
Something I've been thinking about a lot. Is poverty relative? I remember I lived in Brazil for a couple of years, served a Christian mission there, and I got really used to going to people's homes who had dirt floors. They didn't have glass in their windows. They just hang a blanket up over the window at night because it's Brazil. And I mean, these people lived in true poverty. They'd go to work hoping to make enough money to be able to buy bread that evening. And then I came home and my parents' house was so filled with stuff. It felt weird when I first got home. And then I remember my parents, their dialogue all growing up was how poor we were.
Well,
and I had a mind shift and I was like, is poverty only poverty because we look around at our neighbors and it's like, if everybody had a Lamborghini, am I poor because I only have one and my neighbor has four Lamborghinis?
I think the government right now, unfortunately, is catering to a keep up with the Joneses attitude, because the economic definition of poverty in this country puts you in the top 1% of wealth in the world.
And that's why I say poverty is relative. And if we're fighting something that's relative, it's a target you can never hit because it's always changing.
At the end of the day, I think all I want is I just want to know that there's enough freedom and liberty for people to pursue the path that they want. If someone wants to live a lazier life or wants to believe entitlements or doesn't want a financial strong game plan in life and wants to rely on the government when they're older, if that's their plan, dude, you have the right to that choice.
Yeah, they're free.
Just don't remove my right to go and produce this amazing have-it-all life. I mean, I want to be really clear. I'm not saying the purpose is to be rich. I am saying that whatever isn't growing is dying. And so, for example, take your body, your health. There's a point at which we just give up on ourselves. When you give up on your health, we get fat, our heart gets in bad condition. 30% of us are going to die from some kind of heart disease. Have it all for me means living, like I'm going to invest every day in my body, in my nutrition, my exercise, because I want a really healthy body. I invest in my relationship. I've been married this year, it'll be 20 years. My wife and I were going to go off to the Maldives and we're going to have a really wonderful sexy vacation and just a reminder of all the good years and all the tough times that we went through. But I invest every day in that woman because I want to wake up for my 50th anniversary, hopefully have us in relatively good health and have an even more cherished relationship that we still share with each other. I'm investing financially, right? Financially, if you're not growing, you're also dying. So what choices are you making today to become financially smarter and then put that into execution? Execution is everything. So making choices today that financially make you better today than you were yesterday. And then God, dude, I can't leave God out. Like God is at the center of the universe for me of just, I reflect that at this universal level of who am I in relation to everything else and am I becoming a better human being? We all have a birthright of nobility only if we'll seize it, which means for me to be a better, I want to be a more Christian person. I want to be a nicer, I want to be a more generous giver. I want to be a more generous lover. I want to help people. I want to, if I'm growing my stewardship, if I am growing in all these areas of life, does that not make me a more useful tool in helping assist other people? And this is part of that, I can give, and then maybe tomorrow you're in a better position and you can give. And listen, I just want to make sure I can keep participating in that beautiful cycle of life. If anyone steps on any of those freedoms, if anyone restricts my ability to do any of that, I will expat or I will fight. I will bring guns.
Whoa. Hey, don't put this one on TikTok. They will flag our account for that comment. Final thoughts. Millennials, are they financially screwed?
Some.
How come?
And not just millennials, the majority of people. In our 20s, we're young and we're invincible. In our 30s, we're tying ourselves down to obligations. In our 40s, we're maximizing those obligations and servicing ourselves to sometimes 10, 20, or 30 years worth of debt. In our 50s, we're going to wake up one day and say, retirement is a decade out, and I think I did something wrong. And so you now move into fear and panic. And that's when you typically make really dumb financial decisions. Millennials still represents an age group where compared to 2 generations prior, they have 5 times less money at the age of 30 than that generation had at the age of 30 for them. And part of that is some irresponsibility. One could look at it that way. Maybe it's that they're just too busy enjoying life and maybe they're living it up and maybe they're okay with less and maybe they're doing it right. At the end of the day, I think millennials and all people need to pause and say, hey, let's do some real math. How do I have my cake and eat it too? I want to live it up today, but I want to also make intelligent choices so that I can freaking live it up 30 years from now. And part of the have it all lifestyle means that you can create the most amazing, brilliant memories today, but you've also put yourself in a position where you can do that down the road as well. There comes a time in people's life when they're old and ailing, and if they have not financially prepared, they're relying on government or charity. And often when that is not enough, they are left to a weak mindset filled with misery, doubt, regret. And who wants to spend the last decade or decades, thank you, modern medicine, of their life with that? We're all in trouble unless we have a good financial game plan.